Yeah, welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining me today on this session, implementing alternative accessible colors in Power BI. Just before we dive into the content, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Juliana Smith. My background is in physical oceanography and data science, and I've been working now in tech for more than 15 years. I have also created a YouTube channel recently called Accessible BI, and I have a blog on accessible design as well as reporting in Power BI that's called Smart Frames. So today I'm going to be talking about color choice matters, understanding accessibility, web content accessibility guidelines, also known as WCAG, Power BI built-in accessibility features, selecting accessible colors, creating alternate view in Power BI, and I'm going to wrap up. So in terms of UI design, colors refer to the visual property that results from the interaction of light and the way it's perceived by the human eye. And it can be described in terms of hue, saturation, and lightness, where hue is what we commonly refer as color. So for example, red, blue, and green. And it represents the position of the color on the color wheel. Saturation measures the intensity or purity of the color. So a highly saturated color is vivid and intense, while a desaturated color appears more muted and grayish. And lightness refers to the brightness or darkness of a color. So adjusting the lightness can create shades and also tints when they're lighter. So shades we make darker and tints when it's lighter. And by adjusting these three components, we can create a wide range of colors and tones. Vision is the special sense by which the qualities of an object, such as color, shape, and size, are perceived. This process involves light rays entering our eyes and being transformed by the retina into electrical signals and then transmitted to the brain via the optical nerve. And at the retina, there are two types of photoreceptor cells. So we have cones and rods. The cones are responsible for color vision, and they help us differentiate colors. And there are three types of cones. One that allow us to see red, another one that allow us to see green, and another one that allow us to see blue. Rods are just responsible for a vision in low light conditions and detecting movement. So they do not help us differentiate in colors. Color in UI design is used for different reasons. So first of all, it conveys information. So different colors can signal different actions or statuses. So for example, red is commonly known to report on errors and green on success. Using colors also help us creating visual hierarchy in guiding the user's eyes to the most important elements first. And of course, it enhances aesthetics. So colors can make a design more visually appealing and engaging. And finally, colors also evoke emotions. So colors can set the mood or tone of your interface. So for example, we have blue for calmness and yellow for cheerfulness. So that's for all of these reasons, it is very important when we are designing visuals or dashboards to consider those who are not able to see the difference between certain colors. So for those who are colorblind, for example, the ability to differentiate certain hues depends on the color contrast ratio. And there are approximately 350 million people around the world who experience some form of color blindness, and it's about 1 in every 12 males, which accounts for 8%, and 1 in every 200 females, which accounts for 0.5%. And color blindness is the inability to see the difference between certain colors and occurs due to the absence or malfunction of the cells that I mentioned, called cones, that are in our retina. And in addition to general low vision and color blindness, There are other common conditions that affect our ability to see colors, including glaucoma and cataracts. And this is one of the many reasons why digital accessibility plays an important role. So now you might be wondering, what is digital accessibility? Well, digital accessibility focuses on making websites, apps, and other digital experiences usable for all, regardless of abilities and disabilities. And this means that users should be able to perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with digital interfaces without barriers. According to the WHO, there are at least 2.2 billion people globally that have vision impairments, and these accounts for 27% of the global population. So therefore, optimizing color palette for people affected by sight impairments ensures equitable opportunities. And for that, we need to understand the concept of accessible colors. So accessible colors are color combinations that have enough contrast to make text, icons, and other elements easily distinguishable for people with visual or color vision impairments. And these colors ensure that all users, regardless of their visual abilities, can perceive and understand the content clearly. So there are guidelines available to support us designing accessible content, and we should ideally always follow these guidelines and use, for example, accessible colors. But often this is not possible due to existing branding guidelines. So if you have a client or if you're working for our own organization, we usually use their color palettes. And there are also some color conventions like RAG, which is red, amber, and green, that is very commonly used to report on performance and progress. And unfortunately, the most common type of color blindness is the red-green, which makes it very difficult for individuals to distinguish between these two colors. And you can see here an example. And for these users, if your users have color blindness, the red and especially the red and then the green one, red-based visualizations could become very confusing or even unusable. So I mentioned that there are guidance that we can follow to help us build an accessible digital interfaces, and I'm going to talk about what is that. So that's what, I don't know if you heard about, but we have the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, also known as WCAG. There are globally recognized standards designed to make digital content accessible to people with disabilities, and it was designed by the World Wide Web Consortium. So the current version in use is WCAG 2.2. That has been in use since October 2023. And these standards are categorized based on four main principles that are commonly known as POUR. And within these four principles, there are currently 87 success criteria. So let's understand what does POUR mean. So P stands for perceivable. This means that the users can recognize and use the services or tools with the senses available for them. So for example, it will include using text alternative for non-text content like images or icons, and the use of captions for videos. And then we have operable, which means that the user interface components and navigation must be operable. All functionalities must be available from a keyboard and must provide users enough time to read and use the content. And then we have understandable. So information and the operation of the user interface must be understandable. And this involves making the text readable and comprehensible, and also ensuring the user interfaces appear and operates in predictable ways, and helping users to avoid and rectify mistakes. And finally, we have robust. So the content must be robust enough to be interpreted in a reliable way by assistive technologies like screen readers. And WCAG outlines three levels of compliance. So we have level A, AA, and AAA. And these levels represent different degrees of accessibility that digital content should meet. Level A addresses the most basic features and it's not suitable for all users. Level AA addresses the most common barriers for users, aiming to make content accessible to a wider range of people. And level AAA addresses the highest level of accessibility and it provides the most inclusive experience. And the level AA is the most commonly mandated standard for legal compliance. So it balances being accessible for people with disabilities while also staying practical to implement. In the UK, for example, the level AA is also the one that's mandated. So regarding the use of color, we have the principle perceivable that has guideline about making our content distinguishable. And distinguishable means make it easier for users to see and hear content, including separating foreground from background. And then we have within the perceivable, we have the success criterion, that's 1.4.1, on the use of colors, and it defines the color contrast required for the different levels of compliance. And the intent of this success criterion is to provide enough contrast between text and its background so it can be read by people with low vision or impaired contrast perception without the use of contrast enhancing assistive technology. So we know that Power BI has the high contrast mode, but for you to comply with these criterion, your content must be perceivable without the use of these technologies. So it's very, very good. It's very important to highlight that. And now these are the contrast ratio that are required. So I just use here the level AA and AAA. So there are different contrast ratio depending on your font size. So for body text, the level AA states that your contrast ratio should be above 4.5 to 1, equal or above 4.5 to 1. Level AAA, that contrast ratio should be equal above to 7 to 1. And if you have large scale text, which means if your text is above 18 points, or if in bold it's above 14 points, the contrast ratio should for level AA should be 3 to 1, and level AAA 4.5 to 1. And there is also a contrast ratio for non-text contrast. So for example, if you're using icons or graphics, the contrast ratio should be 3 to 1 on level AA, but level AAA does not specify. And here's just to show you an example, which I know it sounds kind of, it's obvious what is a bad contrast, but it's very common to see dashboards and reports using, from the letter R and going all the way to the right, you can see very similar contrast like that. And even though that's obvious, there are still people using it. And there are some exceptions for the contrast ratio, which if you have any text that is inactive or decorative, or if you have, an important image, or if you have any logotype. So when discussing contrast ratio calculation methods, there are two main approaches. So we have the WCAG approach, and we also have the accessible perceptual contrast algorithm that is also known as APCA. So the WCAG 2.2 contrast calculation uses a formula based on the relative luminescence. To calculate this contrast, you can see here the formula. You compare the luminescence of the text color against the luminescence of the background color. And then this method is simple and consistent. It's very easy to implement, but unfortunately is also less accurate in reflecting human perception, especially for very light or dark colors. And it also does not consider the text context, like size and weight. And then we have the APCA. That is a newer method that aims to better match human visual perception. So it uses a more complex formula that I'm not gonna try to show you. um, and this formula takes into account factors like the size and the weight of the text, as well as the colors used. So APCA is designed to provide a more accurate measure of how readable text is against the background. And it is a more accurate and context sensitive, especially when we're using dark mode. But unfortunately, it's also more complex to implement, and it may also require updates to existing workflows. So you may have to, if you want to use the PCA, you're going to have to go through the rework. You have to just make sure that your contrast will match what is under the APCA. So Power BI, so let's talk now about Power BI built-in accessibility features that I don't know if you were aware, but Power BI enables the creation of more accessible reports through its built-in accessibility features. Some of them do not require any additional configuration, and these features are keyboard navigation, screen reader compatibility. So every object in Power BI that has keyboard navigation is also compatible for screen readers. We also have the high contrast colors view. So Power BI Desktop automatically detects which high contrast theme is used in Windows and apply those settings. Power BI Service also attempts to detect the contrast that is being used in Windows and also allows you to manually change the type of contrast you want. And then we have focus mode. So users can expand the visual to fill up more of the screen by selecting the focus mode icon. So if you see here on this image on the top right, there is a red square. So that is the icon that you can click to see the focus mode. And there is also the show data table. So users can view the data in a visual, in a tabular format. So there is, so on the visual, you have the three dots. If you click on it, you're going to see the option show as a table, or there is also the keyboard shortcut that is Alt-Shift F11. And the table that is shown, it is screen reader friendly. Power BI, so the most important thing about these features that do not require configurations is for you to let your users know that they exist and they're there and they can be used very easily. So it's just about when you are handing over your report or your dashboard, let your user know about them. And then Power BI also has some accessibility features that are built into the product, but they require configuration from the report developer. And these are alt text. So with a limit of 250 characters, alt text should include information about the insights that you would like the report consumer to take away from a visual. And it also allows you to use DAX to create like a conditional formatting, making your alt text more dynamic. I have tried creating DAX for conditional formatting, and unfortunately, I don't have a screen reader installed on my computer, so I'm not sure if it worked. But something that for me that I try to do, I add the option to see the table, so the one that is built-in function on the previous slide, so it should show as table. So that's something that you can get away to avoid having to extrapolate the 250 characters, is letting your user know that if there is that option to see the data in a tabular format that is compatible with screen readers. And also we have tab order. So setting the tab order helps keyboard users navigate a report in order that matches the way the users visually process the visuals on your report. And it's also important for those who use screen readers. And then we have titles and labels. So visuals and report page titles are very important accessibility features that serves as a point of reference for the report consumer. So make sure that any title, access labels, legend values, and data labels are easy to read and understand. And then we also have the option to use markers. So it's best practice to avoid using color as the only way of conveying information. So if you're using a visual that allows you to use different markers, you can use different markers for different series. And then Power BI also have some built-in themes to help make your report more accessible. So that if you select the options, you're going to see the accessible themes. But that does not mean that you can use all the colors on these. Just a second. Sorry, it's my son here. So even if you use one of these accessible themes, it does not mean that you're not going to have any accessibility issues using those colors together. So I have selected a couple of accessible themes and I run a color blindness simulation and you can see here. So this is the first theme. Some of the colors, you can see the normal, the standard view is on the top. And then you have the simulation, that's the 3 rows below. And some of the colors, they look very similar on the simulation, especially for the red and green color blindness. And then I tested another theme and I found the same issue. So some colors look very similar. So what does it mean? It means that you can use those themes. Just make sure that the colors that you're using on the same visual, if they can be distinguishable. And also, of course, you can avoid using just the color as a way to differentiate those the different elements on your visual. So there is a lot of good content on how to make your reports more accessible. So here are a few. So there is a recorded session that is Power BI designed for accessibility, where Valerie, she goes through each one of the built-in accessibility features and explain with details. I also have my YouTube channel that I often share content. And Microsoft Learn documentation is also really good. It will give you an overview of the functions that Power BI offer and how to make use of them to ensure that your reports are accessible. So for this session, I created these dummy reports and I want to show you, I created a simulation for that. So there are these 4 different visuals. So you can see a table where I use icons instead of using colors. I just use the arrow pointing up and down. And I use this column chart that it relies on rag color. So it's like a red, green, and amber. And there is like a line chart on the bottom that the 3 different series, they have different colors and also the different line style. And I'm going to show you now a simulation for 3 different types of color blindness, how they would see this page. The reason I created the session, it was because it actually happened to me. I had a visual that was like this column chart with rag status. It was a count of rag status. And for 6 months, I had a stakeholder. He was the main user of that specific report. And he was colorblind, but he never told me. And every week he would message me asking, "Oh, what can you update me? What's happening?" So that actually inspired me to try to figure out what I could do. So here's the first simulation. You can see this is simulating for green color blindness. You can see the arrows pointing up and down. You can see the line chart with the different line style. But when you go to the column chart, when you have the, you're supposed to have rag colors, you can barely see the difference between some of these colors. And the same will happen to the red color blindness, that sometimes you can see that they may have 3 different colors, but it's not clear what is what. And finally, for the you have the simulation for blue color blindness, that again, you can see different colors. If you can see the 3 different colors on the column chart, but it's not clear what those colors mean. So you might be wondering, what can I do? So I will definitely recommend spending some time choosing the color palette before you actually start building your visualizations. There are some problematic combinations that it doesn't mean that you cannot have those colors on your report, but they may cause issues when they're used together on the same visual, and there are no other ways to differentiate them. And these combinations are red and green and brown, blue and purple, light green and yellow, blue and gray, and green and gray. And if you don't have a color palette at all, you have to start one from zero. I recommend you choosing two colors in the opposite sides of the color wheel. So this is an example. Of course, avoiding the problematic combinations that I mentioned. So I usually start with a blue and orange. So I have here these two hex codes. So that's the like a blue, dark bluish and orange. And now I'm going to show you the application that I use that can help you selecting accessible colors. So this is the Adobe Colorblind Safe. It's a free tool you can use online, and you can type in the hex code you want. And underneath, it will show you a colorblindness simulation. And there are different ways you can change it. You can straight away change your color here on the color wheel. You can adjust on the bars, and you can also change your color mode, so from RGB to HSB or LAB. And then by mix and matching, you can try to find, here are 5 colors. You can try to find combinations that there is no conflict on the same line. So here you have the first simulation. There are 3 colors that they are very similar, and it will show you here a warning saying that there is a possible conflict. Although I have found combinations that it was not showing as a conflict, but I found that the colors were very similar, so I adjusted a little bit. And the same page, you can also check the color contrast, because even when we select our colors, if we're going to have any text on the top of those colors, we have to make sure we have at least the color contrast ratio of 4.5:1. So you can also have a look on that. So here under tools, you can select the arrow and go to the contrast checker. And again, you can add your hex code and it will tell you if it passed. So you're going to tell the contrast ratio. So here says the contrast ratio is 3.33:1. If you don't remember the correct one, the correct contrast ratio, it will tell you here underneath that it failed for 17 points and below, which is considered regular text. It says here pass for 18 points and above, or 14 in bold, and it passed for icons and actionable graphics. And you can also select level AAA if you want. And then you see that if you're going to fail for the 3 different types. So I spent some time to select, trying to find alternative rag colors. And starting using these navy blue and orange, I selected 3 colors. So it was the navy, the lilac, and the orange. And after doing that, as I showed you just now, I also checked the contrast ratio if for all the text that we have on the top of that, which will be the data label. And now I'm going to show you a method that I actually implemented about just over a year ago for a client, that I created like an alternative view, and I added a toggle button so the user could toggle between the standard view that would use the usual rag colors, and another view that would not have rag colors, or the color combinations would be accessible. So here's just an example. This is what I'm talking about. So I have here my toggle button, and I'll toggle on and toggle off. Toggle on, I can see here a legend showing what each one of the colors mean. And these colors, they are accessible. And if you see here, the data label as well, they have different colors because some of them are black, some are in white, because I have to check the contrast ratio for those as well. So I'm going to show you now how to do it. It's a method that you use bookmarks. So you're going to have some duplication for that. So I created already here 2 visuals. So I created my standard view with standard rag colors. And I also created the accessible view with the legend here on the top. So let's get started by creating bookmarks. So I'm going to hide my accessible view, and I'm going to create a bookmark. I'm going to call these demo standard, and then I'm going to hide the standard and show the accessible, and I'm create another bookmark. So after I create this bookmark, I'm not going to rename it now. You're going to see why. So before I continue, let's understand what our toggle button will do. So a toggle button, when you toggle something on, you switch something on. So in our case, when we toggle it, we want to show the accessible view. And when we untoggle it, so when we switch it off, it has to go back to the standard view. So let's get started then. We have to insert a bookmark navigator. And once we insert the bookmark navigator, it will show all the bookmarks that we have on our report. That's not exactly what we want. So let's start formatting. So first, I'm going to format my my bookmark. So here on the option bookmarks, I want to allow the selection, because when I deselect, when I toggle off, I want it to launch my demo standard. And the next step, we need to group these bookmark, the bookmark navigator with the bookmark we created here on the pane. So we can do that. So we just click on it, and we go and group. So after we group, we can here on the bookmark select the group 2. That's the one that we have. But we don't want it to show a bookmark 4. We want to have a circle in the middle. So to do that, there are different ways. The way that I found that it's easier, it is if I just click here to rename, and I'm going to call the emoji keyboard. So if you hold the Windows key and period at the same time, and you can select a circle. So I'm going to select the first one. There we go. I'm going to rename this one here. I'm going to call it demo accessible. And then it's nearly done. Let's just make it a little bit smaller. So now to format this bookmark, let's think. When this is toggled off, we want the circle to be on the left side. So let's go to the style. And for the default mode, so when it's toggled off, the horizontal alignment will be on the left. And then we can choose a color. So we can leave it white, doesn't matter here. Let's choose this purple. And then when we want the selected mode, the horizontal alignment has to be on the right, and we can choose a different fill. And then it's looking a little bit better, but we want it to have rounded. We don't want it like a square shape. So we can go to the shape, select the rounded rectangle, and the rounded corners, we can set it to 50%. Then we can just adjust a little bit more. And when we toggle off, we're going to have the standard view. And when we toggle on, we're going to have our accessible view. So after I created these accessible view, I also run a color blindness simulation. So you can see here for my column chart, there was the one that was causing accessibility issues. I can clearly see 3 different colors. And I also know what these colors mean because there is a legend here. And the same happened for red color blindness. And now for blue color blindness, I know what the colors mean. So to wrap up this session, I want you to leave the session having in mind that we should always try to consider the contrast ratio between text and any background, and we should try to aim for at least 4.5 to 1. That is the level AA of compliance. There are 3 tools that can help you checking your color contrast, such like the one that Adobe one that I showed. There is also one that's a WebAIM. And there are also tools if you want to use the perceptual contrast algorithm, the APCA. There are tools that you can use for that as well. You can also run a color blindness simulation if you're not sure if those colors will work together. And above all, we should always avoid using colors, including conditional formatting, as the only way of conveying information. Please note that there are other types of disabilities and impairments that we need to consider when developing Power BI reports. And that's why it's very important to have a look at the Microsoft documentation so we can ensure our reports are truly accessible. And for more on digital accessibility, feel free to check my blog. I am periodically posting tips and what we can do to make a report more accessible. So yes, thank you very much. And just wondering if anyone has any question.
Are all of the built-in themes in Power BI accessible?